Oh, buddy, this is Waldorf.
You talking to me?
I am. This time I am. I wasn't a minute ago.
And this is Statler, the other buddy.
Hey, buddy. This is continuing our series on the 2.0 rules review.
Yes.
The beta version.
Beta version compared to 1.3.
And remember, these are the beta version. This is not the 2.0. This is the beta 2.0.
This is 1.9 or whatever they're going to call it.
Correct.
And it may not even be that because it may be tweaked. And it probably will be tweaked before the final version, but we'll see.
And this was section...
This is part 7 of our multi-part series.
There you go.
Pre-game sequence.
All right. You got to agree on the size of the game, apparently.
Yes.
That's going to drag the things down.
Agreement. Clearly no politicians can play this game.
They made a special step in here where you actually have to declare your special deployments.
Right.
I actually like that.
I like that too.
They talk about the size of the game. What they did is they put in here, they advise 4,500. Doesn't mean the game is unbalanced at 4,000 or 5,000, just not balanced to the same level.
Right.
Because 4,500 is the number they used when they were considering caps and everything else.
Correct. And I think they remember that survey that asked people what the...
They did.
For game sizing.
They did. Anyway,
yeah.
And
I suspect it went into that, putting that language in there.
You're correct. Sharing army list, you share your army list, blah, blah, blah. So this is a little bit different. Building the battlefield.
Yes, and some of the terrain things are different, yes.
They changed this. The building, it was a building or impassable.
Right.
Hill or forest. Now they added cliff to this.
So it's a building or a cliff, and that's it. And
correct.
The building is no longer impassable. But
I'm guessing they're considering cliff as impassable.
I don't recall what it says,
here.
but I'm pretty sure that's what it would be.
Yeah, I don't see anything else down here that's just like...
Well, it's not impassable if you go from the top.
A chasm.
You get to move for a while.
Yeah. And they did give a... what is this? A 2d6 randomization chart.
Yes.
Where you can see the walls, forest, and ruins are going to be the most common. Hills are actually fairly rare.
Hills are fairly rare.
Only on a 4. That's odd.
That's...
Usually you see forest, hill, and something else.
Yeah, that's only like a 9% chance. That's interesting. I didn't actually pick up on that.
Yeah.
Fields are less common, but they don't have the same effect that they used to. Ruins being very common is very interesting, especially if you're infernal dwarves.
That's actually an issue.
I think Blondebeard may have updated this.
Did he update
chart.
this one by himself?
I think when no one was looking,
he switched the 4 and the 8.
The 4 and the 8, the hill and the ruins.
We'll blame him for that.
We'll blame him.
No, that actually is kind of... I have a... Anyway, we'll see. I hope this changes because this is... I don't have ruins. I don't carry ruins in my bag.
Yes, you do.
In my terrain bag.
Those wrecked those wrecked buildings and stuff. You've got ruins.
I've got ruins. I can bring them out.
Yeah.
It's the terrain feature I like playing with the least because it's hardest to move around on.
Well, the interesting one is chasms is how people are going to model it. It'll be very interesting.
Yes.
But no, I like that they've...
it'll be felt. Don't worry.
For some people it will be, yes. No, I like that they have... they've got some other stuff out here.
I really like... I do like that they've expanded this terrain list.
Yeah, I thought it was a little boring, actually, before. So,
yep.
I like that. I said I suspect they'll move a few of those numbers around, but we'll see.
Yeah, just as long as they don't start making these things do magical things to you.
I kind of missed that.
Deployment types. Roll a d6. If you don't agree with your opponent, want to pick up game, just dice off and roll, or dice off. We typically dice off just for variety.
Or we punch him in the face and find another opponent.
There's that option. And steal his miniatures.
That's for Markins.
There's 6 different types of deployment. There used to be 4. The first one, Frontline Clash, stays exactly what it was before. We have the new one, the Dawn Assault. What happens with the Dawn Assault? Because you kind of like this one, didn't you?
I kind of like it conceptually, yes. So it has a different kind of setup. So instead of setting up all the way across the front or back of the table, you only set up 3/4 in. Starting from the text. The table is divided into halves by a straight line through the center of the board. of the board, parallel to the table's long edges. The player who chooses the deployment zone also chooses a short table edge. The graphic probably needs to be adjusted for this a little bit, but short table edge. The other player gets the opposite short table edge. Deployment zones are areas more than 12 inches away from the center line and more than, lost my spot, quarter of the table's length from the opponent's short edge,
Right.
18 inches on a 72-inch table. When declaring special deployment, players may choose to keep up to 2 of their units as reinforcement, which is the old ambush. Basically, the way this is written, these units follow the rules for ambushing units, except when they arrive, they must be placed touching the controlling player's short table edge. So if you look at the graphic, you see the 3/4 deployment,
And then this will be his short
and the short edge is on the side, right?
So his ambushing units come in here, which is interesting. It
Yeah.
is definitely a different concept.
It is, and if for somebody who doesn't have normally ambushing units in their army, it gives them a mechanic maybe to play with,
Correct.
without having to pay points for it.
Yeah.
And then for slow moving armies, it could actually be kind of interesting things that you do.
Yeah, I actually kind of I'm kind of interested in playing a couple games of this and see how it goes.
Or a unit that you want to protect for a couple turns, so you knock down their shooting, and then you bring it. You hope that it comes in later as an ambusher.
Correct, and like I was saying, I think I talked to you earlier about this. I mean, if I'm picking sides and I see a nice hill right here,
Yes.
and I'm playing against a dwarf player,
I'm going
to take this side so he can't use that hill.
Exactly.
And since hills are very rare now, there's a good chance he can't use that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can definitely use it. The terrain is going to be important.
Right.
Well, actually, it is. It could be very important because you're also condensed. A lot of times you have weird terrain in odd spots, and you can work your way around it by going, I'm going to deploy on this side.
Correct.
Or you may not have that option with this particular deployment when you may have to.
Yeah, it might not be there at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm for this. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think it adds some flavor to it.
Moving on, that gives us the counter thrust. This one was there before.
Yes.
It's a few changes. They used to be have to be 6 off the center line
Right.
instead of 8, and units
18?
deployed had to be 18 away
Yeah.
from each other. The other rule in the old one was until they were all deployed.
Right.
Now it's after the total of 6 units have deployed, so basically 3 each have been deployed.
Right.
You can only deploy a single unit at a time.
Yes.
So anyway, it's just kind of usually if you're going to drop everything, you're going to drop everything.
Right.
I mean, I can still see the same thing after you drop 3, dropping everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a little bit difference there.
Right. And that's good. That's good too, because the one after that is interesting, but for tournament players, it could. I can see people not taking this particular scenario because they didn't want to draw out the setup.
Draw another 5-10 minutes into the setup.
Yes.
In circle, still here.
Yep.
No change to this
Nope.
deployment at all, as is refused.
Is the
flank.
graphic different?
No, it's the same.
No. Okay.
Graphic stays the same. The problem with the graphic, the only problem I have with the graphic is it doesn't show inches on the
Right.
width
fender
of the
side.
board,
And the
on
width,
any
yes.
of the widths of the board.
Right, for the standard size table. Yeah.
They don't, yeah. And this way, no matter what's, the advantage of doing it this way is no matter what size table you use, this works.
Yeah.
So I know why they did it. You know, if you go 5-6 feet wide, this always works.
Well, I understand why they did it, but yeah, I think
Anyway.
they can put it in anyway.
Because this is the one that's this is the one that's hardest to explain to new people.
Yes.
Anyway, a new opponent or whatever that hasn't played this scenario,
Yep.
this has always been the hardest one to explain.
Yep. Yep.
But I do like this scenario a lot, actually. This deployment.
Yeah. Anything that messes with deployment, I think, is pretty interesting.
Yep.
Refuse flank is no real change.
No, exactly the same. That brings us to marching columns.
Yes.
The table is divided into halves along parallel edge. You deploy in each 12 inches, just like a standard deployment. The difference here is you must choose a short edge. For instance, the player on the bottom in this case has chosen this right-hand side as the short edge. And then he deploys his first unit, which is number 1. Every unit he deploys after that has to be to the left of that unit.
Right.
Just have to keep going down the line. And the other guy works the exact opposite. He starts deploying here, down this line. The interesting thing they did is war machines are an exception to this.
And characters and scouting units.
Characters I can kind of see because you'll place a unit,
Yeah.
and then come back and put your character in this unit.
Right.
Otherwise, you would have to have all your units with
Yeah,
characters on
yeah,
one corner. So I can understand the need for the characters. The war machines, I'm not too thrilled about the way that works. But anyway, maybe they'll go away from that. And then they've added this as well. And
This is new language.
once a total of 6 units have been placed, you can drop your entire army.
So yeah, so once again, because before I could see this setup only being useful in fun games, but not in a tournament, because the amount of thought people might have to put into based on the terrain and their opponent, the
Correct.
order, because not only is it where it's the order that you place your troops can be quite time consuming. So that helps speed it up a little bit by having them grouped together.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this is more for fun games than for tournament matchups, just because some of the thinking that I still think takes place. But yeah, it's more scenarios are always a nice thing.
I agree. Brings us to secondary objectives.
Yes.
Again, they're just saying agree to it with your opponent, listen to what your TO says, or dice it off.
Yes.
Take your pick. Except, I guess if I guess first on that is listen to what your TO says.
Yes.
Outside of that, then you can choose between agreeing or dicing it off.
Right.
And we've got the 4 we had before, and they're adding 2 more.
And 2 new ones.
So the first 2, hold your ground and break through, nothing changes.
Right.
Spoils of war is new.
Okay. Gather precious loot. Place 3 markers along the line dividing the table into halves. The dashed line and the figures describing deployment types. 1 marker is placed on this line and as close as possible to the centre of the table, while still being more than 1 inch away from impassable terrain. The other 2 markers are placed along the line dividing the table into halves on either side of the central marker, as close to the centre as possible, but at least as third as the top. Yeah, I'm gonna stop reading. This is too hard to read.
This is very confusing.
Basically, you put 1 in the middle, and then you have it again for each one. So
Correct.
So the equidistance across the
Exactly. Space them equally across the center of the line.
Yes. At the start of each of your player turns, any of your scoring units, an important point there, that is not carrying a marker may pick up markers that are in contact with it. So if you're moving along, if you're stationary, one more time, if it's in contact with you at the beginning of your movement, you can grab it. Remove the marker from the battlefield. The unit is now carrying the marker, and you can decide how you're going to mark it, put it inside or whatever. Unless a unit is carrying a marker that has at least full ranks, its march rate is set to its advance rate. So if you have units that don't have at least full ranks, you cannot march. Basically, you're going to be doing advance rate your base movement.
It's to stop the small fast units from going up and grabbing them and hiding.
Small cavalry units can't grab it and just run away.
Correct.
If a unit that is carrying a marker is destroyed, flees, or no longer contains any miles of scoring, the opponent must immediately place all markers carried by the unit within 3 inches of it. They cannot be placed within 1 inch of impassable terrain, but they can be placed inside a unit.
Correct.
So this is basically you're trying to grab them, and you're trying to hold on to them and move around with them. So it adds a tactical flavor to the game, which I think will be somewhat intriguing. It's an advantage to armies that have an easy time getting scoring with ranks.
Right.
Armies, especially they have fighting units that can do it. Armies at MSU stuff will struggle a little bit with this particular one, but it's something different.
Yeah, I was looking at a trick to do with this one. As we were talking, I was like, it doesn't say a fleeing unit can't pick this up. So if you flee onto a marker accidentally, then you move another unit within 3 of that unit, and the fleeing unit picks it up and immediately hands it off. Anyway.
You must place all the markers, carry the unit within 3 inches of it, and drop it.
They immediately hand it off to another unit that's within 3 of you.
Well, the trick is the fleeing unit has to magically actually come in contact with it.
Yes.
That's not so easy to plan.
Oh, it's planning.
Yeah.
Oh, it will be.
Especially with the new fleeing rules.
Oh, it will be for me.
Yeah.
I'm fleeing all the time. I'm going to have a unit on these things.
Damn it! One way or another, somebody's going to flee on top of this thing.
Exactly. I'm using this loophole.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, brings us to King of the Hill. Directly after determining deployment zones, starting with the player that picked the deployment zone, both players choose a terrain feature that is not impassable terrain and is not entirely within their deployment zone. So I pick a terrain feature in your deployment that is not entirely within their deployment zone.
Yeah, and no man's land or your opponent's.
partially into mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no man's land or your opponent's
Or
terrain.
my opponent's terrain, or partially in mine and no man's land.
Yeah.
If I've got a hill that extends out into no man's land, I can use that.
Yes.
Okay. And then the object of that one is to defend that terrain.
Basically, yes.
Capture the flags. Capture the flags is what it used to be, with one exception. If your opponent doesn't, this is where you're trying to, you select 3 scoring units of your opponents, and you're trying to kill those units, destroy those units. The change to this rule is that if your opponent does not have 3 scoring units, you give scoring to enough unit to make it. You can give scoring to any other unit he has.
Yeah.
So technically, if he has 2 scoring units, you can make his war machine scoring for the purpose of this flag.
Yeah.
Or capture the flags. I kind of liked it the other way, that what used to be, but this is a good change. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. No, I think.
It used to have the very big disadvantage to the other player. If you didn't bring 3 scoring units, you were automatically down at least, if you brought 2 scoring units, you're automatically down 1. This one gives you at least, your skewer, your bolt thrower has at least a slight chance of surviving the game.
Yes.
He does have to go after it.
Yes.
This way.
There is that. Yeah, no, I'm sure there's a reason they decided to do this. Maybe they felt that the other way disadvantaged some of the more elite armies. But yeah, it's fine. I don't have.
Yeah. Weird change. Okay.
Secure targets. What changed here? Directly after determining deployment zones, both players place 1 marker on the battlefield, starting with the player with picked up their deployment zone. Each player must place the marker more than 12 inches away from their deployment zone, and a third.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Okay. Along table edge length. I think it's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same thing, except they're using a third of the table edge rather than 24 inches.
Yes.
Because they don't want to assume the standard 72-inch width.
Right.
That's the difference in this one.
Yeah. I think just for rule simplicity, it'd be better just writing it around the 4x6 table and then just having a paragraph regarding the differences for
different sizes. For
warbands and for epic games. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but I mean, this could be
so much shorter.
Well, no, I'm saying its purpose if you happen to be playing in a place where your table is only, you're playing a full size game, but your table happens to only be 5 feet wide.
Yeah, that's true.
Simply because you're limited in what you have access to.
Yeah.
So in that case, these not declaring widths kind of helps a little bit.
That's true.
All right. Deployment zones. Both players roll a d6. The player that rolls higher chooses the deployment zone. Reroll if it's a tie. Both players rolls highest choose the deployment zone. First players pick one on the long edge. Okay.
It just talks about the incorporating the dawn assault and other stuff.
This actually changed a little bit because the old way was you roll a d6 and basically they said a 1 to 3 is one guy, a 4 to 6 is the other. This gives it back to the roll off.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people use the roll off anyway, so I think
that's true. That is true.
They just
go back to
what everybody.
Yeah, people feel like
anyway.
they feel more empowered when they're rolling their own die.
Right.
Which then takes us to spell selection, which opens up a little bit of the magic, which we'll talk about in another video. But wizard apprentices, which are basically wizards, know 1 spell. They can choose between their learned spell number 1 or their hereditary spell. Each army now has a hereditary spell. Wizard Adepts, they know 2 spells. They can choose between spells 1 through 4 on the list and their hereditary spell. However, they cannot choose both learned spell 1 and 4.
Okay.
We haven't seen yet the new paths to see how this, as far as the ordering and all of
What
that.
the deal is between with
What the
1
deal,
and 4.
what they're trying to do with that, but I guess we'll see when we see that. Then we have the Wizard Masters, who know 4 spells, and they can choose between 1 and 6 in the hereditary spell. However, they cannot choose both learn spell 1 and 6. I think there's a magic artifact that allows them to do something like that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But anyway.
Overall, fantastic change. Wizards picking their spells. Novel concept. This is incredibly great.
Yes, this is a wonderful thing.
This is my favorite change.
Something we've both hoped to see as an update. Paying so many points and never knowing what you had to have, especially when you're trying to build a magic synergy with your army, and then you roll the wrong spells was just a terrible thing. Not so bad in a friendly game, but in a tournament environment, that could be devastating. So this is a wonderful change.
I do believe this is my favorite change they made. I don't think it's the most significant. Again, it may or may not be the most significant, but it is my favorite change that I've seen.
It's definitely up there for me.
Next thing, declare special. You declare all your special deployment.
Right.
And I think that's it.
And that ends this particular.
That ends the pregame sequence.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Till the next section.
Thank you for listening.